You want to have a new radio installed in your Class A RV, and you go somewhere and they say,
we don't have the wiring harness, we can't do it.
That's because they don't make a harness for a Class A. For a Class C they do because they're using the Ford harness or whatever manufacturer.
Thing is, either they don't know how to do it or they're too lazy. I'm going to show you how to do it for a Class A.
That's super easy, and I'm also going to show you all the different ways of splicing the harnesses together.
Now I'm going to show you.
So this is the wiring harness that was attached to the old radio. The bad news, if you have a Class A, you're not going to be able to find a wiring harness to buy just to splice into the new one. You're going to have to make your own. I'm going to show you how to do that. The first way will be with no splicing needed. The last will be the easiest, with no crimping or solder needed. This is the harness from the radio that came out of the RV.
And this is the one for a Kenwood. They have the same color wiring
For almost the whole harness.
for one reason.
Because there's a standardized color code for certain wires in an aftermarket radio that all of them follow. There are some wires that are not standardized, so you will have to either look at the label or the manual to see what you hook them up to. The majority wires in a harness will be standardized colored.
First,
Now I'm going to show you how to get your new radio wiring harness to fit your RV by either installing a new connector or using your old harness to adapt it. We'll start with the connector.
you could buy a replacement end.
Now look at the wiring harness to see what color wires are in that white connector. Then put a male end on each of the wires that have that color in the new wiring harness, like I did on this Kenwood.
Now all you do is you look at the old one and you match them up. Make sure they're the same direction. You can tell by the shape of the holes. So now all I'm going to do is have them like this and follow what they have. It's a regular green, so I'll slide the regular green in, snap it in place. Underneath that regular green is the green with the black. I'll slap that in place, and so on.
These two rows I'm putting in first are the speaker wires. The next one will be the other side will be the power, ground, and memory and illumination. The radio that came out of this RV did not have the orange wire for illumination, so the last space on the connector is empty.
But in the factory, if you go outside, if you look at the factory harness, on this side there's an orange wire. So what you can do is you can put a pin on this orange wire also, and you would put the orange wire into this one.
So if you have an orange wire and an empty slot,
You would put the orange wire into that, and that will give you the dimming function for your radio when you turn on and off the headlights. And this is one way of doing it. The next way is just buy the pin. You can just buy these pins separate.
just like the first way, put the pins on the wires that you need to. Take some pictures to make sure you're putting the wires in the right slot. You will need to buy a Molex pin removal tool in order to do this.
You slide it on, push in, and that will pull the wire out. I'm going around and pull all the wires out.
There's a picture you took of the connector to put all the wires in their proper positions. If you want, you could always just do one at a time also.
One at a time.
Now, let's say you do not have a special crimp tool or the tool to take out the pin, and you still want to use this connector. I'm going to show you how by just cutting the harness that came out in half.
I'm going to go right
To
here.
use the back half to splice to your new wiring harness.
So this is the old wiring harness that goes to the radio. I'm just going to plug that back into the radio and put that to the side. I no longer need it. Now on this side,
I'm going to strip about 3/8 of an inch off each wire. Now I'll take the wiring harness that came with the new radio and I'm going to strip the end of those wires. It turns out when you get the new wiring harness, they're already pre-stripped. All you have to do is pull off the end. So I just pull them off real fast. All the wires that are in the connector that plugs into the RV are the standardized radio color code. Now all you have to do is match up the colors of both sides and splice them together. And now I'm going to show you the different ways to splice them.
We want to splice these together. The wrong way, the super wrong way, go like that and say you're done. That's the super wrong way. The next way that should not be done either is going like that and wrapping it with electrical tape. Those two ways are completely unacceptable. Period. If you're doing that, you should not be doing it. This is unacceptable. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to splice. I have a piece of scrap wire. I'm going to show you the acceptable ways using a butt connector. So set it up like that. I can put the wire in, crimp, go to the other side, flip this over, put the other side of the wire in, crimp it. Now this is acceptable, but if you pull hard enough, you will be able to pull it apart. Acceptable, but it can still come loose. A lot of people use those because it's easy and cheap, but mostly easy.
The next one
is use this type of crimp connector. Put the wire on the other side. The wire on the other side. Now you're probably going, well, it's still crimpy. Yes, it still can be pulled apart pretty easy.
Then you use a torch, a lighter, or a heat gun.
Let it heat up. This you don't have to worry about burning the wire.
This heat shrink connector has heat activated glue on the inside to help lock it into place when it's shrunk. I would consider this the next best thing to a professional job. It's waterproof, and all you need is a crimp tool and a lighter. A heat gun would be more preferable though.
Now if you want a professional job, or if you're paying somebody to do it, I'm going to show you what a professional should be doing. So I got my black wire here from my ground. Take a piece of heat shrink tubing. Take it, slide it on the longer pieces of the 2-wire. Slide it down. Now what you want to do is solder these together. So you want to get them intertwined with each other. Like so. Keep our soldering iron hot. And I'm going to hold the soldering iron against the wires. I should have pulled out my good soldering gun. And solder the wires together. Okay, the solder's wired together. Pull it up enough. Slide the heat shrink over top of the wire, like so. Take a heat gun or lighter. And heat shrink it. And now that's a professionally done.
Now that's a professionally done splice.
But now they have made it a little bit more easier to do a professional job with the new stuff they have out in the market. A lot of places now will be using these. And what these are heat shrink connectors with solder in the center. So I'm going to show you how it's done. I decided to use my helping hand to make it easier for me to record for you. This is the style that they use now for professional. It is a heat shrink with solder already built in. So you don't have to worry about heat shrink tubing, and you don't even need a soldering gun. With this, all you need is a hot air gun, a heat gun. You slide the wire in, both sides. Make sure they overlap. Now with them both inside the solder ring, all you do now is take your heat gun, start at one end, slowly heat it up. You'll see the solder start to melt and it shrink to fit. There goes the solder. It's soldering itself now. Okay, the solder is popped out through. Now speed up the rest of it. To close it off and turn it off. You can give it a few seconds for it to cool down. Yeah, that's good. Now you can see it has a nice solder to it. And now this is the new style professional connection. New style, all you need is a heat gun and the soldering heat shrink connectors. Now I'm going to do the rest of them and show you what it looks like when I'm done. Now this is my completed wiring harness for my Boss 10.1 inch screen radio I'll be installing. Everything has been heat shrinked and soldered. For the wire, I did add the orange wire with the pin to it.
Now there's two wires that I have that I need to hook up that are not part of that harness connector. The reverse purple wire and the park brake green wire. And it turns out the old harness is not using this colored wires for those. So I just have to read the labels, match them up, and put the proper space terminal ends on each end of the wire to plug into the RV.
But my wires in my RV are super long.
So I cut the two ends off the old wiring harness, spliced them, and added it to the end of this for the reverse and park trigger. Now here's a way of splicing the wires together with no crimping or solder needed.
I'm going to show you an alternative where you do not have to crimp, that will give you a good hold and very simple to do.
Works pretty good.
These are levered wire nuts.
You put the wire on one side and the wire in the other.
Some of them will have colored levers, which worked out perfect for this. It has some of the main colors for the wiring harness of this radio. In fact, it'd probably make it a little bit easier. I can attach the red ignition power wire, the orange illumination wire, the yellow constant memory power, the green I will save for later use, the blue one I will paint black with a Sharpie and use it for the black ground wire. Now if you have the one that is color coded like this, you can just open them up and slide each wire in according to the color. And now if you use the style with the levers that are not color coded, just make sure the wires you put in correspond to the other wire, the same color on the other side when you latch them. Now you want to take the other side harness and strip it if it's not already stripped. Open up the latch on the other side and insert the wires according to the color of the lever or the color of the wire on the other side and close them.
The rest of the wires are speaker wires.
There are 8 speaker wires, so I could use 4 2-lever latches or 2 4-lever latches, but I don't have any 4 levers, so I'm going to use 1 5 and 1 3. Now with these wires, the lever color doesn't mean a thing. So basically I'm just going to put the wires in order, then you go to the other side and make sure they match up before I latch them together.
I'll put green in the first one, then I'll put green and black in the second one. In the next one, solid purple. Put the purple with the black in the next one. And then I can take the harness here and just match them up. Now the next color I have on this is white.
So I'm going to take this white wire and put it in the last slot of this connector. Then I'll go to the other side and grab the solid white wire and put it in there and snap them shut.
Then I'm going to grab a 3-1. Go white, gray, gray with black, white, gray, gray with black.
And that's the easy way with no crimp or solder, and the wiring harness is ready to go in.